the big key, just to let everybody know right off the bat, everything is going to come down to the amount of calories that we bring in our bodies. It's 100% it. So the energy coming in versus the energy going out. That's the number one thing we want to focus on. So if you look at any big diet that's been advertised, any big, piece of exercise equipment that's been advertised on TV, any of these things, the idea of pills and, things in bottles and all that stuff, all these things that are designed part of the weight maintenance or weight loss industry, it's all designed to help us burn more calories. So even like a fat burner pill, even caffeine sometimes is spouted as a way to increase energy consumption because it burns a bit more calories by raising your heart rate. So everything comes down to calories. So whether you want to gain weight or whether you want to lose weight, calories. Now, outside of that, we're going to have a lot of the human element, prepping food, paying attention to the foods we eat, understanding how many calories are in foods, knowing which foods are probably better to eat than others. But eventually where we want to take this, we want to have some type of calorie goal that we stick with. So once we learn that, okay, calories are the number one important thing, if I had to track anything, if I only had one opportunity to track just one thing, it would be calories, right? Now, once we get those tracked and we understand what's happening with those calories, we can say, all right, if I've been eating X amount of calories for like the last 6 months and my weight is this, and if I want my weight to go lower, then what I need to do is eat less calories. That is the simple, easiest answer to start with. And the only way we're able to do that at first, here's the thing. I wasn't born knowing how many calories were in a banana or were in a smoothie or in a meal. I don't know if anyone is, but it's a skill set that we can learn. No different than, how we learn to read and write. You learn how to drive a car, learn how to use a computer. Understanding the calories that are in foods is just another skill set that we all have access to. And really the best way to learn is to really just sit back, take a little bit of time to start tracking your food to see what they're actually made out of. And I've gone through this process, probably 18 years ago when I first did it. That's what's probably brought me to this point where now I can kind of look at a meal and I can really estimate a good portion of how much the calories are on it, how much protein, how much fat, and how much carbohydrates are in it, just because I do this like all the time. So what we want to do ourselves is just take a step back and, we could be eating the healthiest foods. We could also be eating the unhealthiest foods or a mix in between. But what matters is we need to be eating more calories than we were if we're trying to gain weight. And we need to be eating less overall than we were if we want to lose it. So after we start tracking the calories day in and day out, well, what do we do next? We want to establish a calorie goal, right? So in business, they would call a KPI like a key performance indicator, right? It's the thing that you got to do all the time. So let's just say, say if you were at a restaurant, right? I have a goal and I'm going to make $100 a night or $200 a night as a server. That's my goal. So what am I going to do to get to that goal? Well, I'm going to take extra tables if I can get them, right? I'm going to be really nice to everybody I talk to. So you're able to break down how you reach that goal, right? It gives you something to look forward to and it keeps you on track. So the more you're able to focus on a goal, the more likely you are to achieve it. That makes sense, right? But in practice, that's why we have to actually say, hey, what is my goal? So when we have a calorie goal, we're basing that goal off of the amount of calories we were eating before. So let's just assume that we were eating X amount of calories, and then we realized, well, we're not at the weight we want to be. So let's just say we want to lose weight. Then what we need to do is just lower the calories. So we'll now set a new goal that's just a little bit lower, maybe 10% lower than what we've been eating based off of that average of what we've tracked. So I usually like 10%, doesn't need to be a lot. but just a little bit less. And then what we're going to do is just commit to that. And as we start tracking our food, trying to hit this goal, we end up getting used to the different foods and the meals and the combinations of things that help us hit that goal. And after a bit of time, maybe 2 weeks, we'll monitor our weight and maybe our measurements too, and we'll see what happened with those calories. A couple things are going to happen, right? Only 3 things could happen. One, you'd gain weight, which probably wouldn't happen if you're lowering calories in this example. Number 2, you might stay the same weight. Or number 3, you would lose weight. So you see what we're doing. We're just breaking this down into very finite steps, right? It's a clear path. So let's just say that you gained weight. Well, maybe you weren't tracking the calories correctly. Maybe we're actually still eating the same amount of calories but we just didn't track properly, which goes into my side answer, not to go on too much of a tangent, but weighing food in grams is the easiest way to be consistent with knowing how much food is actually there. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to weigh like every little piece of broccoli or anything. But for example, if you had, a big, a cup of black beans, for example, you can weigh them in grams, and then that's what you would track into, say, something like MyFitnessPal. That's going to be the best way to do it. So like a little digital scale on the kitchen counter. Super, super easy, saves you time actually. So once we have this goal and we start reaching that goal, we just track to see what happens. So if we're losing weight, then guess what? We found this magic number that's working for us. And we can stay at that number of calories up until we hit a point where we hit a plateau. And then we have to adjust it. Now, just let me know if you guys in the chat, if this is making sense to you, either some thumbs up or some yeses in the chat. Just let me know. If there's any questions too, you can feel free to ask those in the chat as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. Excellent. Cool. So what I want to do is just share that there's going to be 2 situations I found people in when we think about how many calories to actually eat, right? Because we know that we have to understand what calories are, how many we're getting, and we have to create a calorie goal. But how do you know how many calories you should make for that goal? There's going to be 2 situations that I've found pretty much everybody I've worked with in a one-on-one environment is a part of these 2 different situations. So one, it's going to be either the person is overeating, so getting more calories in that they're burning, or they're undereating, so actually getting in less calories than they need to just perform optimally. So in these 2 cases, they're going to be complete opposite responses. So just as though I like intermittent fasting, for example, that's not really the best case scenario for everybody, depending on where your metabolism is. So in the case that someone's overeating in calories, well, we're often told, with media that, hey, you should go, run 6 miles, and you should go fight this weight off and do all these crazy exercises to be able to burn calories. Well, the reality is like, we can't put that much energy into exercise for the sake of trying to burn calories, because we ended up creating more stress in the body and then just want to probably go eat afterwards. So if we focus our exercise habits on the resistance training type of exercises, where we're breaking down the muscle tissue, which, everyone in this challenge is doing awesome with the different exercises, those compound exercises, that's what helps break down the muscle to build the muscle back up. And then tells the body, hey, we need to hold on to this muscle mass. We can let go of the fat mass. That's how that works. So we're going to be in 2 situations. If someone is overeating in calories, instead of trying to exercise to get that deficit, we really need to just focus on the diet itself and bring those calories down so that they're at a level where the body's able to use some of its own fuel reserves for fuel. Now, on the other side of the equation, if someone is eating, 1,000 calories a day, their average amount of calories they need to just live without even exercising, without moving, getting out of bed, might be somewhere like 1,400 calories. So there are those situations where someone, what I see a lot is maybe work stress, You just have a very busy day, you don't eat, you get home at night and you just crash and you eat a few things and it comes out to be like 1,000 calories. And what happens there, your weight loss is going to stall in that case because the metabolism is slowed down so much that it's not getting what it needs to fuel the body. So that's a whole other kind of an issue. In that case, we would actually want to bring in more food and raise the calories so that we're at a maintenance level for the body. So everybody's got a little bit of a different, factor of what's going on, but we can probably, if you're listening to this right now, you could probably understand, okay, am I overeating or undereating? Without even knowing what the calories are, we could probably estimate that, right? And it's going to be, based off of, do I find myself really stressed and I don't have any appetite? Or maybe I'm stressed and I have an immense appetite. So once we figure out where we are, there's a lot of different calculations to figure out where we can set our calories at. A really solid one, I think, without me going 100% in depth with you one-on-one, a very solid metric that I feel really comfortable with just giving everybody generally as like a starting point is going to be very simple calorie formula. I'll put it in the chat too, but it's just going to be your goal weight times 12. So it's going to be your calorie. So we're going to call this your initial calorie. Let's see, we'll say starting calorie amount. So this is what's cool about this is it works whether you want to gain weight or lose weight. So we're going to take your goal weight times it by 12. And that's going to equal the amount of calories. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean as soon as you do this and you eat this level of calories, it's going to be perfect. But it is a really, really good starting point, right? So, for example, I'm going to do some math. And let's just say your goal weight is, say, 170 pounds. And then we're going to take 170 times 12. That's going to be 2,040 calories, right? So in this example, what we would want to do is go ahead and just start eating at that 2,040 calories per day by tracking our food. And it doesn't have to be perfectly 2,000 every day, but we want to average. So if one day it's 1,800, the next day it's 2,200, that's cool. Because again, we have to put in some room here because we're human, right? So we're not complete robot programs. So there's going to be a little bit of it, an imperfection, but I want everybody to know you do not have to be perfect. I know we're dealing with math, but you do not have to be perfect. You do not have to get every little number just right to get success with this. You just have to go in that direction and trust me, it's going to work out. So what we want to do is just set that goal. That's a great starting point. And then after 2 weeks of eating at that level, we're going to reassess. We're going to track some data. So, you can step on the scale again. But I also really love photos. And you can just simply take a photo of yourself, form-fitting clothes is totally fine, just so you can see where your body is. From the front, from the side, from the back. I have all my one-on-one clients do that. We always do photos once a month because it's one of the easier metrics to see, because the scale is going to tell you a lot, but the scale isn't always perfect. Our water weight goes up and down. So we don't want to be just focused on the scale only going down or only going up, for example. There's not been one person I've ever worked with where we've just seen a straight down arrow from week to week to week to week. That's just the way that the human bodies do not work that way. We're going to have some weeks where it's down and it's going to come up and then down. So we're going to see a trend. And if you're trying to gain weight, it's going to be the same thing going up. So we want to use this as a starting point, so again, goal weight times 12. And then after 2 weeks, we'll reassess. Am I the same weight? Did I gain weight or did I lose weight? So if you've successfully achieved the path that you've been wanting, so let's say you're trying to lose weight. If you lost like a half a pound or a pound, awesome job. You're doing excellent. So now, if everything's been good, we're just going to stick with that for another couple weeks. The one caveat too is that if you're trying to build muscle and you're trying to gain weight, muscle is going to grow a lot slower than the process of losing fat. So we normally muscle, it's going to take about a 3-month cycle, right? So we don't want to really get hung up on the scale weight if you're trying to gain weight. And the problem is there, you can end up trying to overeat calories to see the scale budge. And then you end up adding a bit more fat mass than lean muscle mass. So that's where the caveat would come in. And again, that's why it's really good to use measurements as well, because the scale is going to give us a reading of not just our muscle mass and our organs and our bones, all the water inside of our body, in the cells and out of the cells, all of the waste in our digestive system, as well as the fat mass. So when we look at that number on the scale, it is taking into account about 7 different factors of weight. So it's a great piece of data, but it's not the only piece of data. So when we have the measurements and when we've got, some photos, we're able to see what's going on. So after you're 2 weeks in, you make an assessment. Do I keep going, or do I lower calories a little bit, or do I raise them up a little bit? And then every couple weeks, you're able to just kind of get an idea. But generally what I found is that once you find a sweet spot, you can stay at that calorie level for months. I had a client I worked with this year who was on a deficit for like 6 months straight. And we probably lowered the amount of calories. We might have dropped them down maybe 100 here or there, over the course of a few months. But once we find that golden spot, you're pretty much smooth sailing. You just have to stick to the plan, right? You stick to those numbers and then it all works out. And so one other thing I like to share here is if you are in the camp where you've been under eating, it's a little bit more of a journey because we have to really repair the metabolism and get it to feel comfortable again, bring it back to homeostasis. So if you found out that you've been really under eating, like if you put in this goal weight times 12 and you realize that's a lot of calories, that's way more than I've been eating, you might have been under eating for quite a while. So if you've ever done a lot of crash diets and you've had, I've worked with people who've eaten 500 calories a day, 1,000 calories a day for a long period of time. And what we need to do instead is raise those calories up. So it is a battle because you're battling against your hormones and your hunger cues and your appetite. And so in that case, I would suggest you start eating more calorie dense foods, so think about adding in the avocado, the peanut butter. You can have some juice to get those calories in if you're not hungry yet. We have to, essentially hunger is part of a hormone, we all need calories to survive, but our hormones are going to affect our ability to be hungry or not hungry. So believe it or not, you might be on one side of the spectrum and say, I'm always hungry, but then there's someone else on the other side that's like, I'm never hungry. And we all have individual battles to face here, but the idea is to kind of find that equilibrium of those calories. So if that all makes sense, let me know, because we focus on everything about the calories, about, one, tracking calories and understanding how food is comprised of calories. Number 2, about, do you have a calorie goal? If not, we're going to get one. And then how do we get that goal? Simple formula, goal weight times 12. And that's a great place to start. And then again, next thing is, are we overeating or undereating? That formula would help see, because again, if that goal weight times 12 looks like the calories way low, we've probably been overeating. If that goal looks really high, we've probably been undereating. So now we've got the calories figured out. It looks like we got some thumbs up, makes sense, excellent. The next biggest factor would be talking about our macronutrients. So the macronutrients are going to be the 3 main pieces of basically different types of food that have caloric value. So those 3 are going to be protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Now, all 3 of these are great for us. Our body is designed to consume all 3 of these: proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So we do not have to go low fat. We do not have to go low carb. We definitely don't want to go low protein, because we realize protein is that building block for our entire actual structure, our bones, our muscles, hair, skin, nails, all of that. So when it comes to the macronutrients, there are a lot of opinions when it comes to what's called your macros, right? Your macros would be your balance of how many macronutrients you're going to eat per day. Generally, we're going to see something like 30% protein, 30% fats, 40% carbohydrates. But I want to make this way easier for you guys. The reality is we keep protein high, then the amount of carbohydrates and fats in the diet, it really does not matter. And that is an amazing thing, because I used to just be like, no, my fat intake has to be this exact percentage, or else I won't be able to hit these goals. It's really not going to matter unless someone's trying to be like, go do a competition and every little tiny little percentage point counts. But for the average person like all of us here, who's just either trying to lose weight or gain weight or maintain weight, we can have whatever amount of carbohydrates or fats we want, as long as protein is high and as long as we have a calorie goal and a calorie ceiling. That's really cool. So what it means is you don't have to go crazy low carb. Carbs, our body and our brain uses carbohydrates for energy. So, and I'm speaking from experience, I've done the low carb diet. I've done every probably diet you can imagine. I've tried it all myself, so you guys don't have to. But carbohydrates are so good for us, especially when we focus on more complex carbohydrates. Some of the ones, especially that you see in my plant protein guides, the more high protein plant foods we have, we're also bringing the carbohydrates along for the ride. And those carbohydrates are also very highly fibrous carbohydrates when you're thinking about plant foods, versus, eating something like, a donut, a cupcake, crackers, cookies. Any of those with more simple carbohydrates, they don't have any nutritional value, meaning they have calories, but they do not have the vitamins and minerals that we need to operate our bodies at an optimal level. So when we have more complex carbohydrates from whole foods, for example, if I had a sweet potato, which I will after this call, it's going to have so many vitamins and nutrients inside of it. It's also going to have fiber. So it's going to help push everything through the digestive system. And it's not just going to supply me calories, but it's going to help actually, it provides all the building blocks for my body to work optimally. And that's also going to affect my hormones, not just any random hormones, but hunger hormones as well. So to help regulate my ability to feel hungry and not feel hungry. So the goal here is, when we think about macronutrients, we don't want to reject any specific macronutrient. So carbs do not make anybody fat. An abundance of calories adds fat. That's the reality of it. So you could have, literally, there's a guy who lost tons of weight eating nothing but Twinkies. And that's because he kept his calories down to a certain level. That means he just had X amount of Twinkies per day. So that doesn't mean that was good for his heart and his organs or anything like that, or, his ability to pump blood through his body. But, and he, could have become diabetic from it. But as far as just weight going up or down, 100% associated with the calories. That's it. So with macros, the main thing we want to focus on is getting your protein to where it's really best case for you. So having a higher protein diet, especially as we age, especially as we get into those later, more senior, elder years, is going to help us retain more muscle mass as well as bone density. So a quick, easy goal is to take your current weight and times it by 0.7. And that'll give you the amount of grams in protein. That would pretty much be like the upper limit for you. Beyond that, there is science that shows that it's not going to really provide you much of a benefit. Myself included, the big bodybuilding community, most people like to suggest 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So I mean, that means if you're 200 pounds, that's 200 grams of protein. That is a lot. And I've had days in my life, different diets, where I've done 200 grams. I've done 300 grams. Yes, that formula is current weight times 0.7. That would be the upper limit. Now, you could go a little bit lower. One of the other suggestions would be your current lean body mass. So that would be fat-free mass. That is a little harder to calculate. But the idea is, I would just suggest generally, if everyone on this, on this call, on this planet, aimed for like 100 grams of protein, doesn't mean you have to be there, but I think you can achieve all the goals you need. I think 100 grams a day, no matter if you're 100 pounds or 200 pounds, I think it's just solid. I think it's a perfect amount. I don't think you're going to be missing out on anything. So if we have a calorie goal set in place, so we take that first goal weight times 12. And honestly, with the protein, you could probably even say your goal weight times that 0.7. Because again, 0.7 is going to be the upper limit. And I don't want anyone to feel like, well, if I can't reach that, it doesn't matter. If you're eating more protein tomorrow than you were today before this, you're doing it. You're doing great. So we figure out the goal weight times 12. That gives us our calories. And then we'll take current weight, or you can even try goal weight as well, times that point by 0.7 for your protein. So I'm going to give you the example that we used. So I think we said someone who was 175 pounds for goal weight times 12. That is, I think I said 170. Let's see. I'm going to put this example in the chat just so everyone can see it. All right, so we're going to do goal weight. Let's just say it's 175 pounds times 12. That equals 2,040 calories. All right, so that is in the chat, so we can see that. So now let's take current weight, and let's just say the weight is 200 times that by 0.7. So that would be 140. So then we'd say current weight, which is, let's see. So let's just say current weight is 200 times 0.7, and that equals 140. So 140 grams of protein. So let's show you the other version and take the goal weight. So we're going to do 175 times, oh, I'm sorry, that first one was 170. Let me see, can I edit this? No, okay, that's cool. So it's 170 times 0.7. So 119. So we have goal weight equals 170 times 0.7. And that is 119 grams. So you can see anywhere from like 100, I still would say 100 grams would be totally fine, right? Because you don't want to make your life too hard. But the reality is you can get 120 grams, 119 grams, like that's great. Like you'd be crushing it. So does that all make sense for everybody real quick? Because the next step is the easiest, I'd say, after we figure those out. Awesome. So after that, now we've got a few more calories to work with. So next up, I just want to share with you guys the amount of calories associated with each actual macronutrient. So fats are going to have 9 calories per gram. And then we have protein, which is going to have 4 calories per gram. So half is less. And then, believe it or not, carbohydrates also have about 4 calories per gram. So I'm putting this in the chat as well. So what you can see is that if we had a food that had 1 gram of fat, it would have 9 grams of protein. And if that food also had 1 gram of protein, or I'm sorry, 1 gram of fat is going to be 9 calories. If we also had 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of carbohydrate, that food would also have 4 calories of protein and 4 calories from carbohydrates. So when we look at a food and say it's 300 calories, it's going to be a mix of fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And they're all going to have different calorie numbers associated with them. So in our example, again, of the goal weight being 170 pounds, we're starting with 200 or 2040 calories. Now, in MyFitnessPal, it makes all this adding or all this math really, really easy because it's going to add your food up. But I want to go through it just like this with you guys so you can really kind of just see it first for just the energetic values and the numeric values, because it really does help. But let's just say we're going to eat that 119 calories or 119 grams of protein per day. We know that protein has 4 calories per gram. So now how many calories does 119 have? So we're going to times 119 by 4. That's going to be 476. All right. So we started with 2040 calories, and we're going to focus on protein first, which is 476 calories. We get a thumbs up or a got it in the chat, just so I know you guys can see this and it makes sense. Like we're doing good. Awesome. So if we take protein and subtract it from the total calories, that means we're going to have 1,564 calories left. Now, out of that 1,564 calories, we can have any combination of fats and carbohydrates as we want. You do not necessarily have to have it be a perfect ratio of 25% fats and 30% carbs. Honestly, out of that 1,564, it could be a mix of anything. Now, that's what's really cool about it. So if we focus on the diet first, adding in the protein, the higher protein foods into our meals, it's going to help us in multiple ways. Number one, it's going to help the body feel full. So it's going to create satiety. So it's going to make it so, especially when we combine it with fibrous foods, we're actually going to feel full. And it also isn't going to necessarily trigger the same type of hunger response as a lot of carbohydrates or a meal with just carbohydrates and fats. So the most beneficial thing we can do is have that higher protein diet for that reason alone, because it helps regulate appetite. It's also obviously giving us those building blocks. This is the part that would make one full. Let's see. So let's see, Bonnie, if you could repeat that question, let me see. So what I was saying was that if we start with our goal weight, times that by 12, that gives us the amount of calories. Then if we take our current, you can take your current weight or your goal weight, times that by 0.7, that'll give you pretty much your upper limit, your ceiling on protein. And then if you figure out that protein number, which in this case, our example's case was 119 grams, we actually broke that down to show each gram of protein being worth 4 calories. So when you times 119 by 4, we hit 476, and subtract that from that overall 2,040 calories. And then that leaves us with 1,564 left over, which could come from all different types of food. Now, when we add this into, say, MyFitnessPal, like if I'm tracking something like tempeh, right? If I'm going to add in some tempeh in MyFitnessPal and I get 18 grams of protein, well, there's going to be some carbohydrates and fats that are going to show up to that party too, right? It's not just, especially with plant-based protein, it's not just a stick of protein. When you're thinking about anything animal-based, you're usually thinking like, a lean chicken breast or turkey. It's probably going to have anything as far as fats or carbohydrates in it. But you're also not getting the fiber there. So if we focus on more plant foods, whether someone's vegan or plant-based or just completely just standard American diet, if we focus on more of those plant-based foods, we're automatically getting a lot of extra fiber in the diet as well, which is so great for the body and digestion. So when we focus on those protein foods, we're automatically going to see carbohydrates and fats come into play as well. So once we add in all the amount of protein and we go and say MyFitnessPal and say, all right, I need 100 grams of protein. Let me think about all these foods and the different meals that I can make. And I've saved you a lot of steps because you got my high protein food guide, right? You can see all the high protein foods. You know, you can even add in the protein shake for 25, 30 grams of protein. Like, so you're third of the way, fourth of the way there right off the bat. So as long as you hit that 100 grams, you'll see how much calories you have left over with the amount of food you've put in. And with those calories, you don't have to be super perfect, right? Of course, we want as many natural whole foods as you can get, but it's okay if you have like some chocolate or if you have a snack, you know, because if it hits your calorie goals and it hits your protein goals, like I said, the balance of your fats and carbohydrates can be wherever they need to be. So I definitely like the overall idea of having 80% really clean foods, minimally processed. If they are processed, we just want mechanical processing. So think about flours. Turning something into a flour is just grinding it up. That's just mechanical processing. But, you know, creating an Impossible Burger and pulling, you know, this chemical out of this plant to then turn it into this other thing, that's, you know, when you're in a laboratory, that's chemical. So we obviously want to chill out on as much of that stuff. But realistically, if you had 80% whole foods, really clean, and 20%, you know, just some things in there that you're just being a human and having some snacks and stuff, like that's all right. I snack all the time, but I usually will eat fruit. I'll eat fruits or I'll have some nuts, and everything hits my calorie goal. Whether I want to gain weight or lose weight, you still have to have a calorie goal. And eventually, you don't necessarily have to track these things for the rest of your life. You know, when I'm in a phase where I like necessarily want to make an adjustment to my body composition, I will track just to make sure. But it takes me maybe like 2 minutes a day. But when I'm just like not really too concerned about going up or down, I just eat the same stuff I've been eating, and I can generally pay attention to how many calories I'm getting. And you have a window, you know, like it's not this fixed finite thing where like, oh, you're 5 calories over your goal and now you're going to gain fat or lose muscle. You have a range, you know, of hundreds of calories before anything changes in your body. So it actually makes things a lot easier. So your maintenance amount of calories before you change and adjust your body, you know, you do have to play with it for the first few weeks, but once you get in that flow, you're good to go. So is that making sense for everybody? Is everyone understanding calories and why those are so important? We have to have that goal that we're aiming for, and we can only get to that goal after we figure out, you know, where we've been at first. So tracking helps us see where we've been. Then we create a goal. So you can either use that number right there. You can reach out to me individually. We can go dive in a bit deeper on that as well to get it like fine-tuned as possible. But once we have that goal, now we just stick to that goal. See what happens for a couple weeks. Maybe nothing happens week 1. That's all right. It takes time for your body to change, right? It's okay. But 2 weeks goes by, if nothing's changed, all right, well, let's make an adjustment. Either we have to raise calories or we'll lower them. No worries. Time's coming and passing either way. So at least I got a plan now. So once we get that figured out, you're a month in, we should be smooth sailing in the direction you want to go in. And now you're making minimal adjustments. And so that's the math part of it. Now, how do we adjust the food and the diet? Well, we find those higher protein foods. We make those meals in advance. So instead of me sitting down today to cook food for myself, I'm going to cook food today, but I'm going to make at least 2 meals out of it. Or I'm going to quadruple the recipe, and I'm going to make 4 meals of the same thing I'm going to make now, but I'm going to put them in 4 containers. So now guess what? I got lunch for the next 3 days, and it totally fits my plan. And I really haven't spent hardly any extra time. Might take a little bit of time at first to get your recipe figured out. Once you get a recipe, that's why I have my recipe guide, because those are literally the recipes that I will use. And I don't have to think about it anymore because I know everything offhand by heart. I know how much protein is in each thing. I know what calories are. I got them saved in my Fitness Pal. At this point, I spend maybe 2 minutes a day max when it comes to tracking food and paying attention to it, because it's in a flow now. But once that stuff is tracked and it's set up, easy, 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 easy. And then you meal prep and you do it in advance. and it saves you all that time. So when you get home from work, or you're having a stressed day, this happened to me a zillion times. I'm stressed and I want to order out. So I go look on DoorDash and I'm like, $27 and it's going to take 50 minutes. I can literally just go in my fridge, pull out the meal I already have made, and it can be something as simple as rice, beans, and onions. Doesn't have to be fancy, but those complete proteins. And a little nutritional yeast, you can add some avocado or hemp seeds. Put it on the pot, and in 5 minutes, I have food. And it's the food that actually fits with my body. I'm not getting all the extra oils, all the extra salt, all the extra preservatives and stuff. It's the key. And what else is cool is that this path, it saves you a lot of money too. Not only does it save your health, but it saves you a lot of money. Because when we go to get food out and about, I mean, it's pretty pricey these days. There's when we think about making some food at home, like literally that rice and beans meal I just told you about might cost me like $2 max. Just for beans and rice and some nutritional yeast and some hot sauce. And I mean, and some onions and some veggies, like this stuff, if we stay away from the very highly processed food products and you go to more regular whole foods, just think rice, beans, quinoa, lentils, that stuff is crazy cheap. It is crazy cheap. So not only are we saving our life and our life source and our energy source, but we can save money doing it this way too, which is an extra benefit and a bonus. And then guess what? When you're really, all right, once a week, twice a month, you can go out to eat, but then you can go somewhere because now you have these calorie goals in mind. You're like, oh, well, if my calorie goal is 3,000 calories a day, for example, well, let me go out to eat and let me choose a meal that's going to fit within that goal. That's what's cool. And those places exist, but we want to focus on the most that we can, cooking at home, eating at home, creating meals in advance, because it allows us the freedom to choose what's actually going in the food and not just getting all this extra stuff we don't need just by default. And again, if we create things bulk in advance at one time, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to do every single meal throughout the full week. But I love Sundays. Hey, just sit down, spend, for rice can take, depending on the rice you get, 20 to 40 minutes right on the stove. Easy. You got enough rice for the entire week. Lentils, same thing. Got enough for the entire week. So stuff isn't hard. There's the learning curve at first to find the foods that you like, to find the ways to make them, and to find the combinations together. So there is a learning curve there. But once we get past that curve, everything is smooth sailing. And the calorie goals, having those numbers, those are the things that are going to ensure that the progress and all the hard work we're putting into this is going to result in that beneficial change. So if you're part of the challenge and like the 21-day plant-based fitness challenge, you haven't started tracking calories yet, if you're in week number 2, I would urge you to do so and see what you've got going on, see where they are, and see what's going on in your body. And if it's working, keep doing what you're doing. If it's not working, we need to adjust the calories. So excellent. So that is everything I wanted to share with you guys today for, the calories, the macronutrients, the protein info. But I'd love to open it up over the next 15 minutes if there's any questions. We can definitely do some Q&A. So you feel free to either pop something in the chat, or you could unmute yourself and just raise your hand. I think Zoom even now even lets you do like, let me see if, I don't know if my hand will go up. Yeah, sweet. Amy, what's up?
Hey, Brian, thanks for this little lesson today. Really appreciate it. So I'm looking at FitnessPal, and I think I've figured out how to change my goals and put in the protein grams that I need to do. But it doesn't automatically adjust the fat and the carbs. Should I not worry about that right now, or should I play with them myself so it reaches my calorie goal?
Yeah, so let me take a look on mine, because So when I work with in my conscious fitness app, which we'll be working with together, that allows me to just focus on just calories and just protein, which is really cool. Because yeah, with the macro goals, if they have a specific one on there, then what we would probably do is just choose. I would probably, if it's asking you for the percentage, I would just probably do 30% protein, 30% fat, and 40% carbs. And then we just don't need to worry necessarily about those numbers being exact.
So, but when I'm planning my meals, I should think about that protein gram as my goal and not worry about the percentages that's in the tracker. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so my Fitness Pal, yeah, so I know you use the guide sheet I had about setting up my Fitness Pal. I know you went off that. So you actually have gotten rid of some of those settings in there. They really like to give you a calorie goal based off of like a calculation. They also do a couple other weird things. If anyone's using my Fitness Pal, what they like to do is they'll take your steps for the day and then they will count that as exercise and they will add those estimated calories that you've eaten and they'll add them back into your calorie goal for the day. So I really do not like my Fitness Pal's calorie tracking. I'm sorry, calorie goals. I like the fact that it tracks and shows you everything. But ideally, I would have all those goals turned off because if you're just we don't want to get in the habit of saying, well, I burnt 200 calories from exercise. Now I get to eat an extra 200 calories because there's no way they can estimate how many calories we really need and how much we burnt from exercise. So we want to keep those variables just consistent. So we want to raise our steps over time. So if you're getting 3,000 steps a day, hey, 4,000 steps will create a bigger calorie deficit for you. Awesome. But with my Fitness Pal, we can go in and go into the settings and you can go into steps and you can say ask app not track. That way it won't add it into the exercise thing. And then the other thing is there's the diary settings. So if Amy, if you took those off, that's good because it'll say something like, oh, you're way past your calorie goal or you're way past your protein goal. Or we don't need an automated thing telling us what we did or didn't do. Because again, what I'm sharing with you is if you're not 30% fats when you basically outlined your goal being 30% fat, we don't need an app telling you that you did something wrong when it doesn't matter at all, right? So that's what I want to share with you. So if your calorie goal is being hit and your protein is as high as you can get it, you're crushing it. You're doing awesome.
So one other quick question, if no one else has one. So I looked at your plant-based recipes, and there's going to be some that I'm just not interested in, which is fine. But where, like, I'm thinking about the grams of protein for each day. And this is just because I'm not educated, but like, where are the basics like that I should start with? Like you mentioned rice and beans, fine, but I'm not going to eat rice and beans 24/7. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like, basic good proteins that to get me started.
Yeah, sure. So I'll go over, we'll go through all the plant-based ones, the highest ones for plant-based, and then we'll go into what I would consider being probably a little bit better versions of animal-based, just because I know not everybody is here is being like 100% plant-based. So I always like to share. I always pull people over to the plant side, so I'm very open-minded, because everyone's going to eat a little different. And I have clients that are 100% vegan. I have clients that are going from vegetarian to vegan, and I have clients that come from just a standard American diet. That's just the reality it is. So I try to like help, everybody with where they are. So when it comes to your highest protein plant foods, we're going to think about whole foods first, and I'll show you some more food products that really help get your protein up. So your biggest ones are going to be soy-based, so edamame. So those are immature soybeans. So those can be steamed. But I also really love edamame pasta because it's one of the easiest things to make. So you can get, there's few brands that have like an edamame pasta. So just like, they make normal wheat pasta, they make them with beans now. So you can get them with chickpeas, lentils, but I love the edamame one. So that's crazy high in protein. So we also have based on soybeans, you also have soy milk. You also have tempeh and tofu. Tempeh is awesome because it is fermented. So it's got vitamin K2 in it. It also has some probiotics. So it's really good for the gut. Tofu is awesome as well. I personally love doing that, kind of making it more scrambled, but you can also chop it in cubes, put it in an air fryer. I like tempeh. I think tempeh's got more taste and more texture. And I cook it with coconut aminos instead of any oil. So coconut aminos, for example, are basically coconut nectar. So it's like a more natural sugar. And again, all carbohydrates are sugars. So it's just a matter of, not overdoing it. But again, it fits those goals and it helps me get makes my tempeh taste amazing. So I love that. I love that. So we've got those. Then we're going to move to like your legumes. So that's going to be all your lentils. Lentils are crazy high in protein. I think 18 grams per cup, I believe, of cooked lentils. So with that, you can just cook those just from, putting them, boil them in water, cook them. Doesn't take long, maybe 25 minutes or so. You've got green, red, brown lentils. But with those, I've even made pizza crusts with those. You can make all kinds of stuff with them. Make like even your like little quesadillas or pita chips, things like that. I've seen all that happen. But yeah, just basically just lentils are fine. All your beans. So kidney beans, black beans, fava beans, mung beans, all your beans, all your different peas, black-eyed peas, green peas, all of those are high in protein. And again, they're going to be high in fiber as well. So most Americans are so under the fiber goals that are required. I think just somewhere I like to at least shoot for at least 30 grams a day, right? For anyone I'm working with. Personally, I get like 60 to 70 grams a day because I'm fully plant-based, right? But when you incorporate these plant-based proteins, you're going to get that fiber just added in. You're going to get more fiber than you probably ever did. So we got our legumes. So like think about beans and all your peas. Then we're going to go to some grains. So quinoa is going to have the most amount of protein per grain, I'd say, as far as really good grains I like. Rice also has a little bit of protein as well. I mean, pretty much all of your foods, every food that exists is going to have a small amount of protein, but we do want to focus on those higher percentage ones. So outside of the grains, you're going to then have like nuts and seeds. So then we're going to have, these are things that we could probably add on to like, say, different meals. Like you could add a tablespoon of hemp seeds. That's going to give you 3 grams of perfectly balanced amino acids. But we also have sunflower seeds, for example, pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds have some of the highest amount of protein per food. So these aren't ones that we're necessarily taking a huge amount because nuts and seeds also have a lot of fat with them compared to vegetables that are going to have more fiber and carbohydrates. So it's not to say fat is bad, but we also have to be mindful fat's going to have 9 calories per gram, where carbohydrates and protein have 4. So they're going to be more dense in calories. So we don't want to eat as many, but it's still good to include those as well. So outside of all of those, you could hit that 100-gram goal a day with just everything I stated. So your tofu, tempeh, edamame, any type of, now this is where I'll get into the next little bit of extra hacks, little extra things. They have textured vegetable protein, which is soy-based, but they also have a version of it that's pea protein-based, which I definitely prefer, just to kind of, it switches up where your protein source is. And pretty much it's just they would take like, say, a soybean, or they take like a pea, and they basically pull the fiber and the carbohydrate content out of it. So it is a more of a mechanical process as far as the processing, but it's not to the extreme of like a chemical alteration, which is where I'm like, that's the stuff that's probably going to mess with your gut too, you know, all the extra stuff added. So with those, you can get them, they're usually marketed as pea protein crumbles or meatless crumbles, plant-based crumbles, plant crumbles, something like that. Or like, you know, plant-based taco meat, things like that. And those are crazy high in protein because it's pretty much just the protein left over. So you could actually say you're gonna have rice and beans. You can add in a little bit of these crumbles, and now you just spiked it by another 15, 20 grams of protein. Like that, it's such a big hack. Another one that I found was fava bean tofu. So they make it the same way they make normal tofu, but they make it with fava beans instead of soybeans. And what ends up happening is this product's a little bit more than just regular tofu, but it's got like twice as much protein. So it's pretty much a brick of protein. So you can just add that in. So those extra little hacks, you know, they're not complete whole foods by like a complete black and white standard, but we're allowing a little bit of processing, which I think is fine because human beings have been processing food and cooking food for, you know, millennia. So I think it's okay as long as we're not adding in a bunch of crazy chemicals and toxins. Now, we also have protein powder. So definitely protein shakes are good, protein bars. The only thing with protein bars, I've always had a problem with them as much as I love them, because there's always extra sugars or extra weird additives or gums or fibers or just fake sugars that are added to them. You know, pretty much protein bars are like candy bars with protein. So it would be better to just have like a protein shake, which could be with like almond milk, oat milk. Soy milk's going to have a lot of extra protein in it. So a plant-based protein is going to give you the advantage of not having dairy added to it. Most of your regular protein on the market, protein powders, is going to be whey protein. That's going to be the gold standard for like the fitness, the bodybuilding world. But we have pea protein now. Pea protein is probably going to be the most normal plant-based one you'd find, but there's going to be mixes that have like pumpkin seed protein. We've been using one that has like almond-based protein in it by this brand called Wholesome. So there's a lot of options out there, but try to find one that's not going to have a lot of crazy additives and fake sugars and stuff. So like Amy, I'll give you some personalized suggestions for the powders, because they're really good to just like put into like a smoothie, you know? All you need is a little bit of almond milk, maybe a frozen banana, and some protein powder, and like it can taste just as good as like a milkshake. It hits those signals in the brain, and it's giving you like 20 grams, maybe even 30 grams of protein. So you're now a quarter or a third of the way to your protein goal with that. And I like to use those as a supplement, right? Ideally, we're getting most of the protein from whole foods. But yeah, just like you said in the chat, they definitely help me when I'm in a rush. There's nothing wrong with it, but we don't want them to be 80%. We want them to be the 20%, right? Now, if we're going to go into anything that's not plant-based, so pretty much anything that's meat or dairy based is going to be high in protein. So when it comes down to dairy is a big problem for a lot of people. Indigestion is a big issue. And when we think about it, obviously, milk and dairy is designed for, you know, a baby calf to become a full-blown cow, like an adult cow. So there's a lot of hormones in there as well that are going beyond just the calories and the fat and the protein and the sugar. A lot of hormones in there that are going to help grow that baby calf up. So when we ingest dairy, that's where a lot of indigestion comes from. I know a lot of people are lactose intolerant, and the reason I stated before, I think, is the reason why, right? It's designed for a baby calf. It's, you know, people can drink it. People have been drinking milk for, you know, thousands of years, I'm sure. But I don't necessarily from my experience and a lot of experience I've had with other people, it's not necessarily the best thing to consume. So with that, you're also going to have effects on your hormone levels. That's why when people are worried about soy and estrogen and soy, you don't need to worry about that. You're getting plenty of estrogen from milk if you're eating, a more conventional American diet. So definitely don't have to worry about that. But if someone was going to go for dairy, the best case thing you could do with dairy would be to do like a very plain fermented yogurt, because the fermentation process helps the breakdown of the sugar in the dairy, and it gives you some probiotics. So, if someone was transitioning, I would say eliminate milk, eliminate cheese. If you had to have some dairy, it would be that, I can't remember the name of the brands, but there's some brands where it's just plain yogurt. And you can just add your own berries and make it very natural as far as, fruits and things you can add into it. As far as meat, definitely, the World Health Organization has come out and said that red meat and your processed, prepackaged deli meats are carcinogenic. So that was pretty wild to see them actually share that and to take that stance. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, thanks for coming by. Take care. And so to see them come out with that was huge. And I'm like, wow, yeah, here's some evidence. So if you were going to eat meat, if someone was eating meat, I would suggest they go to more of the leaner stuff. Like, honestly, and it's hard for me to say this because when I say eat chicken or eat turkey, I'm literally thinking about a chicken or turkey's like individual life. But, as far as human health, it would be better for you to consume chicken than to consume beef or pork. Just because the red meat, the amount of heme iron, there's a chemical called TMAO that's found in red meat as well. So all these things generally are going to create more plaque in the arterial walls, which are going to increase blood pressure by decreasing blood flow. And what that does, it makes it harder for our heart to pump that blood throughout our entire body to reach those outer extremities and the fingers and the toes and in the deep recesses of the brain. So by restricting and eliminating the red meat and eventually more of the meat and the dairy, it's clearing up the pathway for blood to be transported throughout the body, in and out, bringing oxygen and nutrients with it. That's why it's so important to transfer some of these requirements of protein onto these plant foods. Because again, then we're getting that extra fiber as well. But initially speaking, if you had to do a mix, right, you would want to start off thinking about what plant-based recipes can I make? Let me start with the plant-based protein. And then if I still need, because some people might still want, say, like a grilled chicken breast added in. They're still not ready to just, and I don't think anyone should go, say, vegan overnight. Like it's a path. You got to take steps, you know what I mean? You don't need to do this cold turkey. If anyone was interested in that, it's going to be tough. I tried to do it, even going vegetarian to vegan. It was a path. So I had to learn what foods to eat and what meals to make. And I had to give myself time and the energy to make those meals. But you could start with a basis of those foods, the edamame pastas, the plant-based crumbles, the lentils, the black beans. You can add, if you focus on bowls, right? I have like a grain like quinoa or rice. And then I'm going to have like my big plant-based protein source. So I'm going to have some beans. I might have some tofu or tempeh. I might have some peas, and then if you really say, if you're still transitioning, you could still add in some like grilled chicken, for example. Like that would be the way to do it. But you're not substituting necessarily all of your animal protein or all your plant-based protein for animal protein. You want to have like that mix, And other than that, I mean, that's all your protein. Yeah, going back to you, Amy, did that help with like the protein sources? Sweet. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, believe it or not, when you think about a conventional diet, when we think about protein and animal protein, we're really thinking about like I can probably count them on one hand, right? thinking about cows, pigs, chickens, fish slash shrimp, like kind of the same area, but not that many sources, right? They're going to be just 5 animals, right? Pretty much. Then you can get into more exotic things or more different things depending on the culture. But when we go to plant-based, we've got all these different types of beans, all the different types of legumes. We have different grains. Every vegetable is going to have protein. We have the nuts and seeds. We're going to have tempeh and tofu. And like, there's a huge variety. Honestly, like I eat much more different types of foods now than I did before I went plant-based like 11 years ago. So it's awesome. It's awesome. So that's all the protein stuff. Does anyone have any other questions? You can feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. Let me also check Facebook really quick. See if there's anything over here. But yeah, and if this was informative for you guys, let me know. Put it in this chat really quick so I can see, because I always want to make these based off of what you guys are working on, what you're working through, what can benefit you the most. So let's see, on Facebook, Pauline said, I miss a cheesy pizza. Well, do I have news for you? I have a lentil-based pizza recipe in my recipe guide. Now, this one doesn't have any vegan cheese, but if you get the Miyoko's mozzarella cheese, it tastes like mozzarella cheese. And there's that one, and then there's the Veal Life shreds. And I've got one client who is addicted to cheese and dairy, and we got her to switch to the Veal Life, and she hasn't had dairy in so long. So you're still getting that taste and that flavor, but it's not, it's not getting the dairy. Now, Wesley said, I used to really enjoy adding peas in my pasta, but I replaced them with edamame beans for an extra protein boost. Yep, nice. Yep, so that's a perfect example. She found that edamame is going to have a bit more of a higher protein content than the peas. So just a little switch like that was awesome. Those little hacks. Yeah, and as you do this over and over, you start finding the ones, the foods that you like the most, that taste the best, that's going to have like the best ratio for you. And we learn as we go. But the idea is if we start taking action now, we're doing more, we're going to get more out of it than we were yesterday, right? So we don't have to be 100% today or tomorrow or next week. We just have to just continually just trust in the process, pay attention to those calories, that protein, and just track. Because what we don't pay attention to, it just goes unnoticed, right? And there's been studies that show that if people step on the scale and they pay attention to their weight, they generally are able to maintain their weight because it's more top of mind. So that's a good little practice. And like the idea is we don't have to go crazy. You do not have to weigh yourself every day. You don't have to track food for the rest of your life, right? But in order to build a skill set so that you can become an intuitive eater, so you can look at a plate of food and see an estimate about how much protein and how much fat and how much carbs are on that plate, you do have to track first and get used to that process. And then as you see those changes happen in your body, it just fuels that confidence that, hey, at the end of the day, this is like an equation. And like, if I can just do the math, and if I can just make sure the foods I'm eating fit this math equation, this is happening. And that really is the case. Not everything is like that. But when it comes to weight loss, weight gain, weight maintenance, we fortunately have the fact that it's all based on math. At least is that cornerstone and that foundation. And then from there, we can work on, the human elements, the emotional elements, the mindset elements, because at least we have the goal and the math as the North Star to show us where we need to be. And then we can figure out all the other pieces as we're going, but at least we know what path we're on. Excellent. Well, I appreciate everybody for being on the chat, on the live Zoom. also tuning in on Facebook as well. This has been awesome for you guys. So if you're in the 21-day plant-based fitness challenge, this is officially the start of week number 2. So congratulations. You know, if you're watching this and you still want to join, just shoot me a message right now. If this is off in the future, we're probably going to do another one. I'm most likely going to do another one next year as well. So just stay up with me for sure. But this is week number 2. So the big key this week, let's start tracking calories, paying attention, see where we're at, coming with the goal, just stack a little bit more of these habits on top of each other, and then just power through, keep making these high protein foods and these meals I've been seeing in the posts every day, like food's looking awesome. So we just keep it up, keep tracking your results. And before you know it, we're going to be at the end and the 21 days is going to be completed. You're going to have a whole new set of all these skills and the confidence of knowing that, like, yes, I can do this. And if I did this for 21 days, I could keep going. Maybe I'll make it 210 days. Maybe it's just a lifestyle now. And that's my biggest goal for everybody here. So this wraps up week number 2. I'm going to be back again next Monday, same time, same place, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, Monday night next week, sharing another training. We're going to base that off of where everybody is this week ahead. And after that, the week after that, we're going to do an announcement on who's actually going to win this thing. And again, everybody's a winner. Everybody participating, everybody showing up, everybody's a winner. But there will be one winner who's going to win those tickets to the Tampa Veg Fest reception party. So we're going to figure out when we're going to announce those. So much love, you guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will see you all very soon in the group Vegan Strength and Fat Loss Secrets. Much love, y'all. Peace.